Welcome to part 2 of my Kurimao series where I discuss what exactly it was that I brought to camp during my 50-day off-grid adventure. Let me get this out of the way because people might be asking, so what did you use for photos and videos? And syempre, meron akong Android phone and this is an old Android phone. I'd had it for several years. So yung phone battery ko was reserved specifically for photos and videos because this was the only semblance of a camera that I could bring with me. Kino-conserve ko yung phone battery so I can take selfies of me with the Marines and take video footage of whatever was going on in camp and all my demonstrations in camp. Yes, meron akong Android phone but it was reserved for photos and videos. Okay? So let me start with my EDC items. Like I said, gamit na gamit lahat ng EDC or even my urban EDC items doon sa Kurimao. And what was always in my pocket was this Cold Steel Pro Light. I'm having mixed feelings about this Pro Light, but it did what it was supposed to do, which was mostly food prep and just simply having a knife around na hindi pansinin because it was in my pocket. And I always wanted to have a knife on me, so this was it for the most part. But for the entirety of my Kurimao adventure, I had with me a pocket slip. And it's something that I've already discussed in the channel, but let me show you how the pocket slip was configured. So this is the pocket slip as it was configured for Kurimao. And what I had in it, with no surprise, is the Leatherman half micra. So ito yung binaboy ko na micra, which turned out to be more useful in its current configuration than it was when it was like a scissors based multi-tool. Nagamit ko yung 2D Phillips, nagamit ko yung nail file for hygiene, the fine screwdriver, and even the small blade. So it was very, very useful in camp. I never thought it would be. It was good for very fine work like tightening Phillips screws, recycling zip ties, and stuff like that. Also within the pocket slip, I had the Bushnell T50L. So what I'd like about this particular flashlight is it gives me just enough illumination to walk around at night. And if I'm doing close-up work and I'll put it in my mouth, hindi siya masyadong nakakasilaw. So that's what I used it for. And it's one of 4 flashlights that I actually had. And probably one of the most useful items in this particular pocket slip are my mini trauma shears, which cut everything from rope, MRE packages, instant coffee packages, any kind of packaging, duct tape, micropore tape, bandages, etc. I used this for all of that. Napaka-useful ng. Of course, I have a lighter. And I used to have an MRE spoon, which eventually cracked, nasira na. So, naiwan na siya sa basura sa Kurimao. So, this is basically my everyday carry system when I was in Kurimao. So, something I always had on me from the time I wake up, and then I take it out when I go to bed. So, my urban EDC used in the jungle. Okay, next up, I had my self-reliance. Well, what did I used to call this? But anyway, I had this pouch with me. And within the pouch, the items that got used a lot were, of course, my Victorinox walker with the mini saw. I used it to fell trees, and it was for difficult wood processing. There's a particular piece of wood there that was so difficult for the axe to cut through that I had to saw. And I had to fell dead saplings and stuff like that. Along with that, in combination with that, is my Jet Beam Mini 1. So the second flashlight that I carried with me. Primarily, I used it for the red lens. So the red LED light, which was good for, well, finding things in the dark at night without having to be so obtrusive because we had to practice some sort of light discipline within the camp. Next up, I had my Pocket Master with me, in which I used particularly the Fresnel lens. So gamit na gamit yung Fresnel lens, na testing ko na rin siya. And I can tell you that even the cheap stuff works. The cheap, I don't know, 50 peso Fresnel lens was quite useful, and it works. Also, my Konipex 1 to 125 pliers. So this was good for bending wire, pulling out tent sticks. I used it to handle hot items on the stove and other stuff that needed pliers. So without having to cut wire, napaka-useful ng Konipex 125s. And what surprised me the most was, remember this pouch and this particular simple shot scout keyring. So I never thought that I would actually use it. I brought it with me, but I never thought that it would be useful. And it was useful for plinking kasi wala na talaga kaming magawa sa kampo. So instead of bringing a full-sized slingshot frame, I brought this with me, and somehow it still worked. So nakapag-tirador kahit paano. And that was a pleasant surprise for me. So food and water. For the water part, as you can tell, I had this water bottle with me. Again, it's a cheap water bottle that I got 20 years ago. Plus this nesting cup, which I also bought in a camping store in Manila. So as you can tell by the seasoning of the cup, it was well used. So this was what I had for water. Every time I'd walk or take a hike within the camp, I had to have water with me. So the belt pouch helps a lot. For meals, I had a cheap mess kit. I think it's made of aluminum or something. I don't know. But I used this particular mess kit for my meals kasi nga wala akong tiwala dun sa hugas ng mga kasama ko. So I had to have my own mess kit and utensils, which I washed personally. So I know it's clean. And this particular fork, which I don't like because it's so flimsy. I'm going to have to replace these on my next camping trip. But this particular mess kit was good especially for heating up MRE packets. So I used this in conjunction with folding stove. So it's similar to an S-bit stove where you put fuel tabs inside and put this thing over. So the fuel tabs burned long enough to boil water, or at least one serving of water. So that's what I used for the MRE packets whenever I'd have an MRE picnic. So now let's go to the other camping stuff that I brought along and that I'm glad I had with me, particularly my Brandy mini hatchet. So it goes without saying that this thing was a monster when it came to processing firewood. So I'm really glad that I had it with me for that particular task. So processing firewood would have been very difficult without my Brandy hatchet. Next, I had my third flashlight, which is my Solar Force L2T, with its what I call my fog lamps because it's warm and it was very effective, especially on a foggy, misty night. This flashlight did the job quite well. From what I can tell, the throw on this thing was up to 150 meters. I was quite happy with that. So I had this on me, especially at night, where you have to really be careful where you're going. Kasi alam naman natin na pag sa gabi naglalabasan yung mga creepy, crawly creatures. So I had to have a fog cutter flashlight. Next item that I brought with me that I'm glad I had on me is my OpsCore bump helmet. So why did I have a helmet in the first place? One, when you're doing rescue work or when you're in a rescue operation or a medical standby, I always had my helmet with me. And I brought the helmet with me specifically because it had a headlamp on it. So at night when you're doing finer stuff, I really had to have a helmet lamp on me. There you go. So when you're working at night, I had to have a helmet light. So this served as my headlamp. And when I did hiking at night, which I loved walking the flight line at night, I had to have with me some sort of blinker on my helmet. Kasi ang dami rin nagja-jogging and it was dark. So pwede kayong magkabanggaan. Strangely, the US Marines at the time would jog at all hours. They would do a run at all hours. Hindi tumitigil kasi yung training nila eh. Even past midnight, they would do training. So whenever I was walking at night, I had to have the helmet on so that, they don't bump into me. Ganun lang naman kasimple yun. And of course, if anything actually happened, at least I had a hard hat on. So yun yung pinaka main purpose ng. And it goes without saying that I had to have a belt knife on me, and that particular belt knife was this Mora Robust. As you can see, medyo bugbog talaga siya. I used it for whittling, I used it for feather sticking, I even tried batoning with it, scraping. All the rough work that needs to be done with a belt knife was done with this Mora Robust. So talagang nabugbog siya. And surprisingly, I've hardly ever touched this thing up when I was in camp. And even when I got here, it still hasn't had any TLC on it. As you can see, there's some patina on the blade. And hardly ever cleaned it since I got here. But the edge retention on this thing is way up there. It's still really, really sharp, or sharp enough to do a finer work. And I don't know if I can show this on camera, but yeah. Yep, it still cuts hair. Even without a touch up, it still works well. So very, very happy with this Mora Robust, and it works as advertised. Okay, and so for my sleep system, I have this old USMC Whoopee or poncho liner, as you can see. It's in US Marpat, and it's a genuine US surplus item, as you can see from the tag. Coincidentally, it's in Marpat, and I never thought that I would be meeting US Marines at the time. So it worked well as some sort of a sleeping bag because I was sleeping in an open tent on a stretcher, on a gurney, and I would just zip that thing up and I would stay warm and toasty all night. In the beginning, I was using a casualty blanket with the OD on one side and reflective foil on the other. But unfortunately, we had to use that particular casualty blanket as a tarp, and eventually it got ripped to shreds because of the high winds in Kurimao, so have to find a replacement for that. That was basically it for my sleep system, which worked surprisingly well. Now the Whoopee is lightweight and really, really great item to have. So something that I'm really glad I brought with me because I never expected Kurimao to be that cold at night. I guess that's about it for most of the stuff that I had. Now, aside from being in working clothes the whole time, I'm sure you've seen me wear these hats. In most of the videos, this hat, well, this is the Philippine Marine Corps pattern, and this is a genuine US Marpat boonie, which was gifted to me by my good friend Corporal John Ray. So I had to have a hat with me, whether it was baking hot or pouring in the pouring rain. So a boonie hat is good to have with you. Of course, sunglasses. My sunglasses are nothing to write home about. So there you go. Sunglasses, a boonie hat. They were quite useful in camp. Of course, the stuff you don't see me wear is that I had working shoes on me. Initially, I had boots. And then, surprisingly, I wore clogs in camp to be more comfortable. Nagsuot ako ng tactical clogs. which surprised me. Napaka-komportable pala niya in camp. So, those are just a few things that are hardly in camera, but stuff that I used in camp. How about stuff that I wish I had with me in camp? Medyo pinag-iisipan ko kung meron pang mga items na I wish I had with me in camp. I brought a pair of working gloves with me, but unfortunately they got worn and torn. So gloves are one thing that's good to have in camp. For another, instead of the Cold Steel Pro Light, I wish I had my Spyderco Native 5 on me. I don't know, for some reason I wish I brought this one instead of the Pro Light, simply because it's lightweight and I like the blade profile on this thing better compared to the Pro Light. I'm kind of partial to to the Native 5's cutting profile, but the reason why I brought the Pro Light was because it's something that I could beat up on. But as you can see, the triad lock is quite hard to disengage, and I actually cut myself at some point with this particular blade trying to close it. And it's hard to open with, it's hard to manipulate with one hand, takes some doing, and it's difficult to close. So that was my only complaint with this particular knife. So I wish I had the Spyderco instead of the Cold Steel, but that's just me. You can bring something else if you wanted. For another, I wish I had a left-handed sheath for the robust. I wish this would come in left-hand sheath versions because I was wearing this thing on my right side the whole time, and it's a dexterity thing. It's a lefty kind of thing. But I'm quite happy with the robust as a belt knife. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I wish they had a left-hand sheath for it. Light sticks. Unfortunately, the light sticks that I brought with me, particularly these Recon medical brand 6-inch brake light, was not necessarily that bright. I don't know why. I wish I had like a better set of light sticks, but this is what I got. So I guess that's about it. Stuff that I brought with me to Kurimao, well, most of it. What I can say is that I'm glad I brought the stuff that I did, and they were quite useful to say the least. So happy ako dun sa equipment na dala ko. No complaints there. Everything that I had with me performed quite well. So I have zero complaints with what I brought with me. And I would suggest that on your next camping trip, you have a similar or an equivalent of what I brought with me, because if you had those, then they would be very useful in camp. And that's about it. I think this video is longer than it needs to be. Don't forget to, again, like and subscribe. And if I can publish this on time, I'll be in the Tactical Survival and Arms Expo, the Tax Expo 2025. I'll be speaking on June 22nd, so I'll see you guys there. If you're in Metro Manila, we'll be at the SM Mega Mall. So hope to see you guys there if you have the time. It's a Sunday. I'm going to be the first speaker of the day, so hopefully I'll see you there. That's been the long and the short of it. This has been Absabando for Manila Sentinel. Raw, make your lives emergency proof.
5100, maintain runway heading, climb 3,000 feet, runway 13, clear for immediate takeoff.